So I am speaking now with Willy Schwarz, who is a dear friend and a person who I used to play with quite a lot when he lived in Chicago, and now he resides in Bremen, Germany, and he's been there for 20 years. Willie,
Good 20 years.
yeah, he married a German woman. I was at the wedding,
That's
and
true.
when you were living in Chicago, we used to hang out quite a bit, and I learned a lot about Indian music from you. Yeah, you're a multifaceted musician, to say the least. You play so many instruments. You're a fantastic accordion player. Used to tour on accordion with Tom Waits, as I remember,
Hmm.
and wrote a lot of music for Chicago theater that
That's
you
true.
actually performed on stage, quite a bit of it. Uh, but in your capacity here on this recording, you were playing Indian percussion. And
That's right.
could you just talk a little bit about how you learned how to play tabla and mridangam?
Well, let's see. I started studying Indian classical music in 1970 in Seattle with a guy named Ashish Khan. Ashish Khan was the son of Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, the great Narod player. And in that year, 1970, it was at the University of Washington, he brought along a young man who was leaving India for his very first time, 19 years old, and that was a guy named Zakir Hussain.
Oh my goodness.
And by coincidence, we ended up being next door neighbors in Seattle.
Hmm.
And so I was Zakir's first American friend.
Wow.
And he immediately started showing me these tabla rhythms. I had been faking tabla already for 3 years, playing my own autodidactic technique, And he would just show me on tabletops and whatever. And we had a lot of adventures together.
Hmm.
I spent a good part of the 70s either in India studying that music and also with travels to Afghanistan and
Wow.
Iran and various places, or in America studying it further. It became a real passion for me. And so the two pieces that you and I play on this compilation, incidentally, I'm flattered that you're putting both of them on there. Um,
Well, they're
I
both
believe.
very strong, and we used to hang out a lot together. And you introduced me to the structures of a lot of Indian rhythm
Right.
because I only had a vague idea of a lot of this stuff before. And the two pieces we played together, one of them that has Rela in it, which is very funny that a lot of Indian percussion instruments imitate. They have a thing imitating the rhythm of a train, and it's called Rela, which just cracked me up because harmonica. There's all these train imitations that harmonica players do.
Taking the words right out of my mouth.
It's the same
Well, and
thing.
I was thinking about it, Howard. It's a harmonica was never intended to be blown backwards, inwards as the home key,
Right.
uh, and the tabla was not necessarily invented to do this. I
Uh, uh,
mean, it is, but the specific imitation of a train is something that you find in all of the various tabla gharanas,
mm,
the
mm,
various
mm,
schools of tabla playing.
mm.
Just as sure as you can find a harp player in North Carolina or a harp player in Texas. I mean, I think of Sonny Terry, the great Sonny Terry, and
Right. Yes. So basically, we just experimented with this. I don't think we really rehearsed very much, and we
no,
did it at Sparrow Studios, which was a really nice room. And we sat across from each other with no headphones on and just recorded. And we did a few takes of this, and I think it came out great. And I had to give it a name, so I called it The Train to Bangalore.
yeah, this following. I mean, what was cool about that piece was just starting from a dead stop at the station,
Yep,
and the first thing we hear is Howard's harmonica just blowing that whistle, all on board.
that's right.
I mean, you really pay tip the hat to the tradition. We really, the energy is really, and we're just in lockstep. I mean, it was just a breeze and a lot of fun to record that with you. So the other piece, I was thinking about the importance of a 12 beat cycle in North Indian vocal music features prominently a 12 beat cycle.
Yes.
There's two different ones. The one that you hear the most in most classical North Indian singers is called Ektal, and it's divided 4-4-2-2. And what happens is that the only part that's fixed in this 12 beat cycle is from the 12th beat to the first beat of the next cycle, because all Indian rhythms go in a cycle. They're not linear, they're cyclical.
Yep.
So the only part that's fixed with fixed words and everything is from the 12th beat to the first. And you know what that is? That's ba 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 ba, and then you're into the next cycle.
And so this is the
It's the
beauty.
turnaround. It's the turnaround.
Exactly.
It's
And this is the beauty of it. I don't remember whose idea it was in particular, but I just do remember thinking, what if we played Ektal so slow that each beat was a bar, which would coincide with the 12 bar blues?
No, actually, that was I who.
That was your idea.
Yeah, because that's how Ektal is played. I
In
mean, you can play Ektal like this. Din din dagadirikatuna katti dagadirikadinna din din dagadirikatuna katti dagadirikadinna din. That's 12.
yes,
But the way the singers sing it is din din. We're at 2.
yes,
Da ge. So the most of the piece I spent doing that, just letting you have it, and without giving you that much rhythmic feedback, but just doing what an Indian tabla player would do, a humble Indian tabla player. And it's only toward the end of the piece, like the last few minutes, where we slip into a more of a triplet feel.
yep.
And then I really, I gotta say, I wish I would have started that sooner because it was more interactive with you.
Well, the thrill for me was that I had never experienced this feeling before. We had never rehearsed it. We had
No,
never discussed it before we sat down
no,
together in the studio.
just did it. And just
Usually Americans who play a slow blues, it's in 4/4 of some sort or a 12/8 feel, but it's like 12 bars of something.
right,
This is basically one bar of 12/1,
right.
and it gave me an entirely different feeling. I had no idea how long I was going to play.
It was 14 minutes, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, time just sort of got
That's a raga. That's a raga.
yes, and this is the first time that I felt like I had gotten into a space like this, and it was carrying me along. And your sound, I think, is recorded particularly beautifully on this too. They had a bunch of really good mics. It was a live mix.
Yeah.
It was I was very trusting, and I'm really glad I trusted them. Uh, and it was I felt like I could have gone on even longer, but I thought at a certain point maybe it's time to try to wrap this thing up. Yes.
And the thing I'm thinking is that it's that arc of 12, that is the same. That's the same between blues and classical Indian. That
And
in,
that was what was so exciting about it, that it felt absolutely natural and congruent. The
yeah,
the structure of that tal, that
yeah,
tala, and the structure of the blues. These three
yeah,
are phrases, which are the identical phrases in both of these forms, and it was just something that happened organically with no forethought. I
yeah.
remember the only forethought was that you played a little T high as an introduction,
Yes, that's
and you
right.
said, "I'm going to
To,
do."
to,
Da, da, da,
to
da, da,
kick it
da."
off.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
which and I understood where one was, and we actually might have practiced that for a minute, but then
yeah.
past that, we just like got into a space and a zone, And I'm just incredibly happy that this thing was preserved. And
Well, and Howard,
at it.
the at the top, you were very clearly, in the tonic, subdominant, dominant mode. But the longer you played, the more you freed yourself from it, so that it just became this exploration into the ether, and with the tabla holding the 12 down. But you felt no longer the need to say, okay, now we're going to the four. I mean, it just became this thing on its own. So
It was a fascinating thing because I was in the middle of my first year of intense touring with the Flexones, and it had just come to an end, and I just had this intense desire to record something that was different from that because that was like a full-time job, and I had all these ideas that were stored up in my head, and I just really wanted to play duets with
uh-huh.
some of my most interesting musical friends, and you were definitely right up at the top of the list.
Oh man, that's great.